Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 13. Towed by a Mule.
"Bless my gizzard, is it anything serious?" asked Mr. Damon. "Will it blow up or anything like that?"
"No," replied the lad as he leaped out of the car and began to make an examination. Mr. Sharp assisted him. "The motor seems to be all right," remarked the balloonist as he inspected it. "Yes," agreed our hero, "and the batteries have plenty of power left in them yet. The gauge shows that. I can't understand what the trouble can be unless—" He paused in his remark and uttered an exclamation. "I've found it!" he cried. "What?" demanded the aeronaut. "Some of these fuses blew out. I turned on too much current, and the fuses wouldn't carry it. I put them in to save the motor from being burned out, but I don't use heavy enough ones. I see where my mistake was."
"But what does it mean?"
inquired Mr. Damon. "It means that we've got to walk back home," was Tom's sorrowful answer. "The car is stalled, for I haven't any extra fuses with me." "Can't you connect up the battery by using some extra wire?" asked Mr. Sharp. I have some, and he drew a coil of it from his pocket.
"I wouldn't dare to.
It might be so heavy that it would carry more current than the motor could stand. I don't want to burn that out. No, I guess we'll have to walk home, or rather I will. You two can stay here until I come back with heavier fuses. I'm sorry." Tom had hardly ceased speaking when from around the turn in the road proceeded a voice, and at the sound of it all three started, for the voice was saying,
"Now it ain't no use for you to act that-a-way, Boomerang. You all ain't got no call to get contrary now just when I want to get home to my dinner. I shouldn't think you'd want to get to the stable. I should think you'd want to get to the stable, too. But if you all ain't mighty careful, I'll cut down your rations. That's what I's a-going to do. Get along now. That's a good fellow. Ho, ho! I knowed that'd fetch you all. When you all wags your ears that-a-way, that's a sure sign you all going to move."
Then followed the sound of a rattletrap wagon approaching.
"Eradicate! It's Eradicate!"
exclaimed Tom.
"And his mule Boomerang," added Mr. Sharp.
"He's just in time," commented Mr. Damon, with a sigh of relief as the ancient outfit in charge of the aged colored man came along. Eradicate had been sent to Shopton to get a load of wood for Mr. Swift, and was now returning. At the sight of the stalled auto, the mule picked up his ears and threw them forward.
"Whoa dar now, Boomerang!" cried Eradicate. "Don't you all commence to getting skittish. Dat machine ain't going to hurt you. Why, good land o' mercy, if it ain't Mr. Swift!"
cried the colored man as he caught sight of Tom.
"What's de trouble?"
he asked. "Broken down," answered the young inventor briefly. "You always seem to come along when I'm in trouble, Rad."
"That's right," assented Eradicate with a grin. "Me in trouble am old acquaintances. Sometimes she hits me a clip on de head, den again Boomerang, my mule, gets it. He just had his trouble. Got a stone under his shoe and don't want to move. Den when I did get him started, he balked on me. But it's all right now. But I sure am sorry for you.
Can't I help you all, Mr. Swift?"
"Yes, you can, Rad," answered Tom.
"Drive home as fast as you can and ask Dad to send back with you some of those fuses he'll find on my workbench. He knows what I want. Hurry there and hurry back." Eradicate shook his head doubtfully. "What's the matter? Don't you want to go?" asked Mr. Sharp, a trifle nettled. "We can't get the car started until we have some new fuses."
"Oh, I wants to go all right enough, Mr. Sharp," was Eradicate's prompt answer. "You all knows I'd do anything to oblige you, old Mr. Smith. But it's this here mule, Boomerang. I just done promised him that we was going home to dinner, and he expects a manger full of oats. If I got to Mr. Swift's house with him, I couldn't no more get him to come back without his dinner than you can get that there car to move without them fusin' things you all talked about." "Bless my necktie!" exclaimed Mr. Damon. "That's all nonsense. You don't suppose that mule understands what you say to him, do you? How does he know you promised him his dinner?" "I don't know how he know, Mr. Damon," replied Eradicate, "but he do know just de same. I know hit would be like pullin' teeth. and wuss, to get Boomerang to start back with them foozed things until after he's had his dinner. Wasn't it, Boomerang?"
The mule waved his long ears as if in answer.
"Bless my soul, I believe he does understand," cried Mr. Damon. "Of course he do," put in the colored man. "I's awfully sorry. Now, if it were afternoon, I could bring back them what-do-you-call-ems in a jiffy, 'cause Boomerang allus feels good after he has his dinner, but before that—"
and Eradicate shook his head as if there was no more to be said on the subject. "Well," remarked Tom sadly, "I guess there's no help for it. We'll have to walk home unless you two want to wait until I can get back with Eradicate and come back on my motorcycle. Then I'll have to leave the cycle here, for I can't get it in the car."
"Bless my collar button!" cried Mr. Damon. "It's like a puzzle of the fox, the goose, and the bag of corn on the banks of a stream. I guess we'd better all walk."
"Hold on!" exclaimed Mr. Sharp. "Is your mule good and strong, Eradicate?"
"Strong? Why, dis yer mule could pull a horse over dat is when he's got a mind to, and he'd do most anything, you know, 'cause he's anxious to get home and to his dinner. Ain't you all, Boomerang?"
Once more the mule waved his ears like signal flags. "Then I have a proposition to make," went on the balloonist. "Unhitch the mule from the load of wood, and hitch him to the auto. We've got some rope along, I noticed. Then the mule could pull us and the runabout home."
"Good idea!"
cried Mr. Damon.
"Dar's de racket!"
ejaculated Eradicate.
"I'll just sequesterate dis yer load of wood side ob de road, and hitch Boomerang to de auto."
Tom said nothing for a few seconds. He gazed sadly at his auto, which he hoped would win the touring club's prize. It was a bitter pill for him to swallow. "Towed by a mule!" he exclaimed, shaking his head and smiling ruefully. "The fastest car in this country towed by a mule! It's tough luck."
"'Tain't half so bad as going without your dinner, Mr. Swift,"
remarked Eradicate as he began to harness the mule to the electric runabout. Boomerang made no objection to the transfer. He looked around once or twice as he was being made fast to the auto, and when the word was given he stepped out as if pulling home stalled cars was his regular business. Tom sat beside Eradicate on the front seat and steered while the colored man drove the mule, and Mr. Sharp and Mr. Damon were in the tonneau seats, as Tom called them. "I hope no one sees us," thought Tom, but he was doomed to disappointment. When nearly home he heard an auto approaching, and in it were Andy Foger, Sam Snedeker, and Pete Bailey. The three cronies stared at the odd sight of Boomerang ambling along with his great ears flapping, drawing Tom's speedy new car. "Ha, ha!" laughed Andy. "So that's the motive power he's going to use. Look at him, fellows. I thought his new electric that was going to beat my car and win the prize was to be 200 horsepower. Instead, it's one mule power. That's rich." And Andy's chums joined in their laugh at poor Tom. The young inventor said nothing, for there was nothing he could say. In dignified silence he passed the car containing his enemies, they, meanwhile, jeering at him. "That's all right," spoke Eradicate, sympathizing with his young employer. "Maybe dey'll want to tow themselves some day, and when dey does, I'll make Boomerang pull 'em in a ditch." But this was small comfort to Tom. He made up his mind, though, that he would demonstrate that his car would do all that he had claimed for it, and that very soon. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 14. A Great Run. Boomerang did not belie the reputation Eradicate had given him as a beast of strength. Though the electric runabout was heavy, the mule managed to move it along the road at a fair speed with the four occupants. Perhaps the animal knew that at the end of his journey a good feed awaited him. At any rate, they were soon within sight of the Swift home. Mr. Damon and Mr. Sharp refrained from making any comments that might hurt Tom's feelings, for they realized the chagrin felt by the young inventor in having his apparatus go back on him at the first trial. But our hero was not the kind of a lad who is disheartened by one failure, or even half a dozen. The humor of the situation appealed to him, and as he turned the auto into the driveway and noticed Boomerang's long ears waving to and fro, he laughed. The lad insisted on putting new fuses in the car before he ate his dinner, and then, satisfied that the motor was once more in running order, he partook of a hasty meal, and began making several changes which he had decided were desirable. He finished them in time to go for a little run in the car, all alone, on a secluded road late that afternoon. Tom returned with eyes shining and cheeks flushed with elation. "Well, how did it go?" asked his father. "Fine, better than I expected," responded his son enthusiastically. "When it gets to running smoothly, I'll pass anything on the road." "Don't be too sure," cautioned Mr. Swift, but Tom only smiled. There was still much to do on the electric runabout, and Tom spent the next few days in adjusting the light steel windshield that was to come down over the driver's seat. He also put in a powerful electric searchlight, which was run by current from the battery, and installed a new speedometer and an instrument to tell how much current he was using, and how much longer the battery would run without being exhausted. This was to enable him to know when to begin recharging it. When the current was all consumed, it was necessary to store more in the battery. This could be done by attaching wires from a dynamo, or, in an emergency, by tapping an electric light wire in the street. But as the battery would enable the car to run many miles on one charging, Tom did not think he would ever have to resort to the emergency charging apparatus. He had a new system for this, one that enabled him to do the work in much less than the usual time. With his car still unpainted and rather rough and crude in appearance, the lad started out alone one morning, his father and Mr. Sharp having declined to accompany him on the plea of business to attend to, and Mr. Damon not being at the Swift house. Tom rode about for several hours, giving his car several severe tests in the way of going up hills and speeding on the level. He was proceeding along a quiet country road in a small town about 15 miles from Shopton, when, as he flashed past the small railroad station, he saw a familiar figure standing on the platform. "Why, Ned," called Tom, "what are you doing over here?" "I might ask the same thing of you. Is that your new car? It doesn't look very new." "Yes, this is it. I haven't had a chance to paint and varnish it yet, but you ought to see it go. What are you doing here, though?" "I came over on some bank business. A customer here had some bonds he wanted to dispose of, and I came for them. You see, we're enlarging our business since the new bank started." "Has it hurt your bank any?" "Not yet, but Foger and his associates are trying hard to make us lose money. Say, did you ever see such a place as this? I've got to wait 2 hours for a train back to Shopton." "No, you haven't." "Why not? Have they changed the timetable since I came over this morning?" "No, but you can ride back with me. I'm going, and I'll show you what my new electric car can do." "Good!" cried the young bank cashier. "You're just in time. I was wondering how I could kill 2 hours, but now I'll get in your new car and maybe we'll kill a few chickens or a dog or two when we get her speeded up," put in Tom with a laugh in which Ned joined. The two lads, seated in the front part of the auto, were soon moving down the hard highway. Suddenly Tom pulled a lever, and the steel windshield came sliding down from the top case, meeting the forward battery compartment, and forming a sort of slanting roof over the heads of the two occupants. "Here, what's this?" cried Ned. "We're going to hit it up in a few minutes," replied the young inventor, "and I want to reduce the wind resistance." "Oh, I thought maybe we were going through a bombardment. It's all right. Go ahead. Don't mind me. I'm game." There was a celluloid window in the steel windshield, and through this the lads could observe the road ahead of them. As they swung along, the speed increasing, Ned saw an auto ahead of them. "Whose car is that?" he asked. "Don't know," replied Tom. "We'll be up to it in about half a minute, though." As the electric runabout, more dilapidated looking than ever from the layer of dust that covered it, passed the other auto, which was a powerful car, the solitary occupant of it, a middle-aged man, looked to one side and, seeing the queer machine, remarked,
"You fellows are going the wrong way to the junk heap. Turn around." "Is that so?" asked Tom, his eyes flashing at the cheap wit of the man. "Why, we came out here to show you the way." "Do you want a race?" asked the man eagerly, too eagerly, Ned thought. "I'll give you a brush if you do, and a handicap into the bargain." "We don't need it," replied the young inventor quickly. "I'll wager $50 I can beat you bad on this 3-mile stretch," went on the autoist. "How about it?" "I'll race you, but I don't bet," answered Tom a bit stiffly. "Oh, be a sport," urged the man. Tom shook his head. He had slowed down his machine and was running even with the gasoline car now. He noticed that it was a new one of 6 cylinders and looked speedy. Perhaps he was foolish to pit his untried car against it, yet he had confidence in his battery and motor. "Well, we'll race for the fun of it, then," went on the man. "Do you want a handicap?" Tom shook his head again, and there came around his mouth a grim look. "All right," assented the other, "only you're going to be beat badly. I never saw an electric car yet that could do anything except to crawl along." "You're going to see one now," was all the retort Tom permitted himself. "Here we go, then," cried the man, and he gave his gear handle a yank and shoved over the sparking and gasoline levers. His car instantly shot ahead and went chugging down the road in a cloud of dust. At the same moment Tom, in answer to a look from Ned, who feared his friend was going to be left behind, turned more power into the motor. The humming, purring sound increased, and the electric car forged ahead. "Can you catch him?" asked Ned. "Watch," was all Tom said. The hum of the motor became a sort of whine, and the electric rapidly acquired speed. It crept up on the gasoline car as an express train overtakes a freight, and the man, looking back and expecting to see his rival far behind, was surprised to note the queer-looking vehicle lapping his rear wheels. "Well, you are coming on, aren't you?" he asked. "Maybe you'll keep up now." He shifted the gears, using a little more gasoline. For a moment his car opened a wide gap between it and Tom's, but the young inventor had only begun to race. Still louder purred the motor, and in a few minutes Tom was running on even terms with his competitor. The man looked annoyed and tried by the skillful use of gasoline and sparking levers to leave Tom behind, but the electric held her own. "I've got to go the limit, I see," remarked the man at last, glancing sideways at the other car. "I'll tell 'em you're coming," he added, "though I must say your electric does better than any of its kind I've ever come across." "I'm not done yet," was the comment of our hero, but the man did not hear him, for he was yanking into place the lever that enabled him to run on direct drive for 4th speed. Forward shot his car, and for perhaps a quarter of a mile it led. The racers were almost at the end of the 3-mile level stretch of road, and if Tom was going to win the impromptu contest, it seemed high time he began. "Can you catch him?" asked Ned anxiously. "Watch," was his chum's reply. "I haven't used my high-speed gear yet. I'm afraid the fuses won't stand it, but here goes for a try anyhow." He threw over a switch, changed a lever, and then, having pushed into place the last gear, he grasped the steering wheel more firmly. There was need of it. In an instant the electric runabout, with the motors fairly roaring, swept up the road after the gasoline car that was almost hidden from sight in a cloud of dust. Faster and faster went Tom's car. The young inventor was listening with critical ear to the song of the machinery. He wanted to learn if it was running sweet and true, for that is how a careful mechanic tests his apparatus. Foot by foot the distance between the two cars lessened. Now the electric was lapping the rear wheels of the gasoline machine, but the driver did not know it. His whole attention was on the road ahead of him. "Half a mile more," cried Ned, naming the distance which yet remained of the straight stretch. "Can you do it, Tom?" His chum nodded. He shoved the controller handle over to the last notch, and then waited an anxious second. Would the fuse carry the extra load? It seemed so, for there was a slight increase of power. An instant later Tom gave a sudden twist to the steering wheel. It was well that he did, for he was passing the gasoline car dangerously close. Then he was ahead of it, and in a second he was 3 lengths in advance. Desperately the man opened his muffler
and sought to gain by this advantage, but though his car gave off explosions like a battery of guns in action, he could not gain on Tom. The electric shot around a curve in the road, winner of the impromptu race by 1/8 of a mile. "Well?" asked Tom of his chum as he slowed down, for the road was now not so good. "Did I do it?" "You certainly did. Whew! But we did scoot along. 80 miles an hour there one spell," went on the young inventor, glancing at a gauge. "But I've got to do better than that to win the big race." Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 15. Andy Foger's Black Eye. Around the bend came the six-cylinder touring car. The driver, with a surprised look on his face, was slacking up. He ran his machine up alongside Tom's. "Hey," he asked in dazed tones, "did you take a shortcut or anything like that to get ahead of me?" "No," answered the youth. "And you didn't jump me in the air?" "No," was Tom's answer, smilingly given. "Well, all I've got to say is that you've got a wonderful car there, Mr. He paused suggestively. "Swift is my name," our hero answered. "Thomas Swift of Shopton." "Ah, I've heard of you. My name is Layton, Paul Layton. I'm from Netherton. I see you built an airship, didn't you?" "I helped," Tom admitted modestly. "Well, you beat me fair and square. And if I do say it myself, I've got a fairly speedy car. Took 2 firsts at the Indianapolis meet last month, but you certainly scooted ahead of me. Where did you buy that electric, if I may ask?" "I made it." "I might have known," admitted the man. "But are you going to put them on the market?" "If you are, I'd like to get one. I want the fastest car going, and you seem to have it." "I hadn't thought of manufacturing them for sale," said the young inventor. "If I do, I'll let you know." "I wish you would. My, I had no idea you could beat me, but you did, fair and square." There was some more talk, and then Mr. Layton started on, after exacting from Tom a further promise to let him know if any electrics were to be made for sale. "You certainly have a wonderful car," complimented Ned as he and his chum took a short cut to Shopton. "Well, I'm not quite satisfied with it," declared Tom. "Why not?" "Well, I've set 100 miles an hour as my limit. I didn't make but 80 today. I've got to have more speed if I go up against the crowd that will race for the touring club's prize." "Can you make 100 miles?" "I think so. I've got to change my gears, though, and use heavier fuses. I was afraid every second that one of the fuses would melt and leave me stranded. But they stood pretty well. Of course, when the car, geared as it is now, has been run a little longer, it will go faster, but it won't come up to 100 miles an hour. That's what I want, and that's what I'm going to get." And the lad looked very determined. Ned was taken to the bank, and as Tom turned his machine around to go home, he saw standing on the steps of the new bank, which was almost across the street from the old one, Andy Foger, and the bully's father. The red-haired lad laughed at Tom's rough-looking car and said something to his parent, but Mr. Foger did not notice Tom. Not that this caused our hero any uneasiness, however. But as he swung away from the bank, he saw coming up the street a figure that instantly attracted his attention. It was that of Mr. Berg, and Tom at once recalled the night he had pursued the submarine agent and torn loose his watch chain. Mr. Berg was evidently going to enter the new bank, for at the sight of the former agent, Mr. Foger descended the steps and went to meet him. Tom, however, had decided upon a plan of action. He steered his machine in toward the curb, ran up the steel windshield, and called, "Mr. Berg." "Eh? What's that?" asked the agent in some surprise. Then, as he caught sight of Tom and recognized him, he added, "I'm very busy now, my young friend. You'll have to excuse me." "I won't detain you a moment," went on Tom casually. "I have something of yours that I wish to return to you." "Something of mine?" Mr. Berg was evidently puzzled. He approached the electric car in spite of the fact that Mr. Foger was calling him. "Something of mine. What is it?" "This." exclaimed Tom suddenly, extending the compass watch charm which he always carried with him of late. "That? Where did you get that? I lost it." Mr. Berg paused in some confusion. "I grabbed it off your watch chain the night you were hiding in the shrubbery and tripped me into the brook," answered the lad, looking the man squarely in the eye. "Hiding? Tripped you? Grabbed that off my chain?" stammered Mr. Berg. He had taken the charm up in his fingers, but now he quickly dropped it back into Tom's hand. "I guess you're mistaken," he added quickly. "That's not mine. I never had one. That's not mine, at least. Oh, you'll have to excuse me, young man. I'm in a hurry, and I have an important engagement." And with that, Mr. Berg wheeled off and joined Mr. Foger, who stood on the sidewalk waiting for him. "I thought sure it was yours," said Tom easily. "Perhaps Mr. Foger will keep it in one of the safety deposit boxes of his bank until the owner claims it." And he looked at the banker. "What's that?" asked Andy's father. "This watch charm which I grabbed off Mr. Berg's chain the night he was sneaking around our house and crossed the electric wires," went on the lad. "Don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's saying," exclaimed the former submarine boat agent. "It's not my charm. He's crazy." "Oh, am I?" thought Tom, with a grim look on his face. "Well, we'll see about that, Mr. Berg," and putting the charm back in his pocket, Tom swung his machine toward home, while the agent and the banker entered the new institution. "So they're getting chummy," mused Tom. "Andy and Berg were friends when Andy shut me up in the submarine tank, and now Berg comes here to do business, and Foger and his associates are trying to put the old bank out of business. I wonder if there's any connection there. I must keep my eyes open. Berg is an unscrupulous man, and so is Andy's father, to say nothing of the red-haired bully himself. He had nerve to deny that was his charm. Well, maybe I'll catch him some day." Tom spent a busy week making new adjustments to his electric car, changing the gear and providing for heavier fuses. He was planning for another trip on the road, as the time for the great race was drawing near, and he wanted the mechanism to be in perfect shape. One evening, as he was preparing for a short night trip to Mansburg, where he had promised to call for Miss Nestor, Tom left his machine standing in the road in front of the house while he went back to get a robe, as it threatened to be chilly. As he came back to enter the car, he saw someone standing near it. "Is that you, Ned?" he called. "Come take a spin." Hardly had he spoken, then there sounded from the machine a whir that told of the current being turned on. "Don't do that!" cried Tom, knowing at once that it could not be Ned, who never meddled with the machinery. A blinding flash and a loud report followed, and Tom saw someone leap from his car and try to run away. But the figure stumbled, and a moment later the young inventor was upon him, grappling with him. "Here, let me go!" cried a voice, and Tom uttered an exclamation of surprise. "Andy Foger!" he cried. "I've caught you! You tried to damage my car!" "Yes, and I am hurt, too," whined Andy. "My father will sue you for damages if I die." "No danger of that. You're too mean," murmured Tom, as he maintained a tight grip on the bully. "You let me go!" demanded Andy, squirming to get away. "Wait until I see what damage you've done," retorted the young inventor. "The worst, though, would be the blowing out of a fuse, for I had the gear disconnected. You wait a minute now. Maybe it's you who'll have to pay damages." "You let me go!" fairly screamed Andy, and he aimed a blow at Tom. It caught our hero on the chest, and Tom's fighting blood was up in an instant. He drew back his left hand and delivered a blow that landed fairly on Andy's right eye. The bully staggered and went down in the dust. "There!" cried Tom, righteously angry. "That will teach you not to try to damage my car, and then hit me into the bargain. Now clear out before I give you some more." Whining and blubbering, Andy arose to his feet. "You just wait. I'll get square with you for this," he threatened. "You can accept part of that as pay for what you did in the tar and feathering game," added Tom. Then, as Andy moved in front of one of the electric side lamps on the car, Tom uttered a whistle of surprise. Both of Andy's eyes were bruised and swollen, though Tom had only hit him once. "Look at me!" cried the bully, more squint-eyed than ever. "Look at me! You hit me in one eye, and the explosion hit me in the other. My father will sue you for this." As he hurried off down the road, Tom understood. Andy, coming along, had seen Tom's car standing there and, thinking to do some mischief, had climbed in and turned on the power. Perhaps he hoped it would run into the roadside ditch and be smashed. But as the gear was out, turning on the electric car had a different effect. As the bully pulled the handle over too quickly, throwing almost the entire force of the battery into the wires at once, the load was too heavy for them. A safety fuse blew out, causing the flare and the explosion, and a piece of the soft lead-like material had hit the red-haired lad in the eye. Tom's fist had completed the work on the other optic, and for several days thereafter Andy Foger remained in seclusion. When he did go out, there were many embarrassing questions put to him as to when he had had the fight, and he didn't care to answer. As for Tom, it did not take long to put a new fuse in his car, and he greatly enjoyed his ride with Miss Nestor that night. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 16. Trouble at the Bank. Coming in rather late from his trip to Mansburg and thinking of some things he and Miss Nestor had talked about, Tom was rather surprised on reaching the house to see a light in his father's particular room, where the aged inventor did his reading and his planning of new devices. "Dad's up rather late," said Tom to himself. "I wonder if he's studying over some new machine." The lad ran his auto into the temporary garage he had built for it and connected the wires of a burglar alarm he had arranged to give warning in case any of his enemies should seek to damage the car. Tom encountered Garrett Jackson, the aged inventor, who was going his rounds, seeing that everything was all right about the various shops. "Anybody with my father, Garrett?" asked the lad. "I see he's still up." "Yes," was the rather unexpected reply. "Mr. Damon is with him. They've been in your father's room all the evening, ever since you went away in the car." "Anything the matter?" inquired the young inventor, a bit anxious as he thought of the Happy Harry gang. "Well, I don't know," and the engineer seemed puzzled. "They called me in once to know if everything was all right outside and to inquire if you were back. I saw then that they were busy figuring over something, but I didn't take much notice. Only I heard Mr. Damon say, 'There's going to be trouble if we can't realize on those bonds,' and then I came away." "Is that all he said?" asked Tom. "No, he said, 'Bless my buttons,' or something like that, but he blesses so many things I didn't pay much attention." "That's right," agreed the lad, "but I wonder what the trouble is about. I must go see." As he passed along the hall out of which his father's combined study and library opened, the aged inventor came to the door. "Is that you, Tom?" he asked. "Yes, Dad." "Come in here if you haven't anything else to do. Mr. Damon is here." Tom needed but a single glance at the faces of his father and Mr. Damon to see that something was troubling the two. The table in front of them was littered with papers, covered with rows of figures. "What's the matter?" asked Tom. "Well, I suppose I ought not to let it bother me, but it does," replied his father. "Something wrong with your patents, Dad? Has the crowd of bad men been bothering you again?" "No, it isn't that. It's trouble at the bank, Tom." "Has it been robbed again?" asked the lad quickly. "If it has, I can prove an alibi." And he smiled at the recollection of the time he and Mr. Damon had been accused of looting the vault, as told in Tom Swift and His Airship. "No, it hasn't been robbed in just that way," put in Mr. Damon. "But bless my shoelaces, it's almost as bad. You see, Tom, since Mr. Foger started the new bank, he's done his best to cripple the one in which your father and I are interested. I may say we are very vitally interested in it, for since the withdrawal of Foger and his associates, your father and I have been elected directors." "I didn't know that," remarked the lad. "No, I didn't tell you, because you were so busy on your electric car," rejoined Mr. Swift. But Mr. Damon and I, being both large depositors, were asked to assume office, and as I was not very busy on patent affairs, I consented. "But what is the trouble?" inquired Tom. "I'm coming to it," resumed Mr. Damon. "Bless my checkbook, I'm coming to it. You see, we have lost several good customers by reason of Foger opening the new bank. That wouldn't have mattered so much, as between your father and myself and one or two others we have enough capital to carry on the business of the bank. But there is a more serious matter. We hold a number of very good securities, but they are of a class hard to realize cash for on short notice. In other words, they are not active bonds, though they are issued by reliable concerns. And two, the bank has lost considerable money by not doing as much business as it formerly did. In short, we don't know just what to do, Tom, and your father and I were discussing it when you came in." "Do you need more money?" asked Tom. "I have some that is in my share from the submarine treasure, and some I have allowed to accumulate as royalties from my patents. It's about $10,000, and you're welcome to it." "Thank you, Tom," spoke his father. "We may use your cash, but we'll need a great deal more than that." "But why?" asked the lad. "I don't understand. If you have good bonds, can't you dispose of them and get the money?" "We could, Tom, yes, if we had time," replied Mr. Damon. "But to throw the bonds on the market at short notice would mean that we would not get a good price for them. We would lose considerable." "But why do it in a hurry?" "Because there is need of hurry," responded Mr. Swift. "That's it," joined in Mr. Damon. "We have to have cash in a hurry, Tom, to meet pressing demands, and we don't just see our way clear to get it. I'm trying to raise it on some private securities I own, but I can't get an answer within several days. Meanwhile, the bank may fail because of lack of funds. Of course, no one would lose anything ultimately, as we could go into the hands of a receiver and eventually pay dollar for dollar. Your father and I and some of the other directors might lose a little, but the depositors would not. But your father and I don't like the idea of failing. It's something I've never done, and I'm too old to start in now. Bless my cash ledger if I'm not. And for the sake of my reputation in this community, I don't want to see the bank close its doors," added Mr. Swift. "It would give Foger too good a chance to crow over us." "And you need cash in a hurry," went on Tom. "How much?" $50,000 at least," replied Mr. Damon. "And if you don't get it?" The eccentric man shrugged his shoulders. "Well," remarked Mr. Swift musingly, "I don't see that we need worry you about it, Tom. Perhaps—" Mr. Swift was interrupted by a ring at the front door. The three looked at each other. It was late for a caller, and Mrs. Baggert had gone to bed. "I'll answer it," volunteered Tom. He switched on the electric light in the hall and opened the door. He was confronted by Mr. Pendergast, the president of the bank. "Is your father in?" asked Mr. Pendergast, and he seemed to be much agitated. "Yes, he is," replied the lad. "Come this way, please." "I want to see him on important business," went on the president, as he followed the young inventor. "I'm afraid I have bad news for him and Mr. Damon. Bad news, Tom, bad news." And the aged banker's voice trembled. Tom, with a chill of apprehension seeming to clutch his heart, threw open the library door. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 17. A Run on the Bank. "Why, Mr. Pendergast!" exclaimed Mr. Damon, rising quickly as Tom ushered in the aged president. "Whatever is the matter? You here at this hour? Bless my trial balance, is anything wrong?" "I'm afraid there is," answered the bank head. "I have just received word that makes it necessary for me to see you both at once. I'm glad you're here, Mr. Damon." He sank wearily into a chair, which Tom placed for him, and Mr. Swift asked, "Have you been able to raise any cash, Mr. Pendergast?" "No, I'm sorry to say I have not. But I did not come here to tell you that. I have bad news for you. As soon as we open our doors in the morning, there will be a run on the bank." "A run on the bank?" repeated Mr. Swift.
"The moment we begin business in the morning," went on Mr. Pendergast. "Bless my soul! Then don't begin business," cried Mr. Damon. "Oh, we must," insisted Mr. Pendergast. "To keep the doors closed would be a confession at once that we have failed. No, it is better to open them and stand the run as long as we can. When we have exhausted our cash—" He paused. "Well?" asked Mr. Damon. "Then we fail. That's all." "But we mustn't let the bank fail," cried Mr. Swift. "I am willing to put some of my personal fortune into the bank capital in order to save it. So is my son here." "That's right," chimed in Tom heartily. "All I've got. I'm not going to let Andy Foger get ahead of us, nor his father either." "I'll help to the limit of my ability," added Mr. Damon. "I appreciate all that," continued the president, "but the unfortunate part of it is that we need cash. You gentlemen, like myself, probably have your money tied up in stocks and bonds. It is hard to get cash quickly, and we must have cash as soon as we open in the morning to pay the depositors who will come flocking to the doors. We must prepare for a run on the bank." "How do you know there will be a run?" asked the young inventor. "I received word this evening, just before I came here," replied Mr. Pendergast. "A poor widow who has a small amount in the bank called on me and said she had been advised to withdraw all her cash. She said she preferred to see me about it first, as she did not like to lose her interest. She said a number of her acquaintances, some of whom are quite heavy depositors, had also been warned that the bank was unsound, and that they ought to take out their savings and deposits at once." "Did she say who had thus warned her?" inquired Mr. Swift. "She did," was the reply, "and that shows me that there is a conspiracy on foot to ruin our bank. She stated that Mr. Foger had told her our institution was unsound." "Mr. Foger!" cried Damon. "So this is one of his tricks to bolster up his new bank. He hopes the people who withdraw their money from our bank will deposit with him. I see his game. He's a scoundrel, and if it's possible I'm going to sue him for damages after this thing is over." "Did he warn the others?" inquired the aged inventor. "Not all of them," answered the president. "Some received letters from a man signing himself Addison Berg, warning them that our bank was likely to fail any day." "Addison Berg!" exclaimed Tom. "That must have been the important business he had with Mr. Foger the day I showed him the watch charm. They were plotting the ruin of our bank then." And he told his father about his disastrous pursuit of the submarine agent. "Very likely Foger is working with Berg," admitted Mr. Damon. "We will attend to them later. The question is, what can we do to save the bank?" "Get cash, and plenty of it," advised Mr. Pendergast. "Suppose we go over the whole situation again." And they fell to talking stocks, bonds, securities, mortgages, and interest, until the youth, interested as he was in the situation, could follow it no longer. "Better go to bed, Tom," advised his father. "You can't help us any, and we have many details to go over." The lad reluctantly consented, and he was soon dreaming that he was in his electric auto, trying to pull up 1,000-pound lump of gold from the bottom of the sea. He awoke to find the bedclothes in a lump on his chest, and, removing them, fell into a deep slumber. When the young inventor awoke the next morning, Mrs. Baggert told him that his father and Mr. Damon had risen nearly an hour before, had partaken of a hearty breakfast, and departed. "They told me to tell you they were at the bank," said the housekeeper. "Did Mr. Pendergast stay all night?" inquired Tom. "I heard someone go away about 2 o'clock this morning," replied the housekeeper. "I don't know who it was." "They must have had a long session," thought Tom as he began on his bacon, eggs, and coffee. "I'll take a run down to the bank in my electric in a little while." The car was still in rather crude shape outwardly, but the mechanism was now almost perfect. Tom charged the batteries well before starting out. The youth had no sooner come in sight of the old Shopton Bank
to distinguish it from the Second National which Mr. Foger had started. Then he was aware that something unusual had occurred. There was quite a crowd about it, and more persons were constantly arriving to swell the throng. "What's the matter?" asked Tom of one of the few police officers of which Shopton boasted, though the lad did not need to be told. "Run on the bank," was the brief answer. "It's failed." Tom felt a pang of disappointment. Somehow he had hoped that his father and his friends might have been able to stave off ruin. As he approached nearer, Tom was made aware that the crowd was in an ugly mood. "Why don't they open the doors and give us our money?" cried one excited woman.
"It's ours. I worked hard for mine, and now they want to keep it from us. I wish I'd put it in the new bank."
"Yes, that's the best place," added another. "That Mr. Foger has lots of money."
"I can see the hand of Andy's father and that of Mr. Berg at work here," thought Tom. "They have spread rumors of the bank's trouble and hope to profit by it. I wish I could find a way to beat them at their own game." As the minutes passed and the bank was not opened, the ugly temper of the crowd increased. The few police could do nothing with the mob, and several bolder than the rest advocated battering down the doors. Some went up the steps and began to pound on the portals. Tom looked for a sight of his father or Mr. Damon, but could not see either. It was not the regular hour for opening the bank, but when the police reminded the people of this, they only laughed. "I guess they ain't going to open anyhow," shouted a man. "They've got our money and they're going to keep it. What difference is an hour anyway?" "Yes, if they have the money, why don't they open, and not wait until 10 o'clock?" cried another. "I've got $105 in there and I want it." More excited persons were arriving every minute. The crowd surged this way and that. Many looked anxiously at the clock in the tower of the town hall. The gilded hands pointed to a few minutes of 10. Would the bank open its doors when the hour boomed out? Many were anxiously asking this question. Tom sat in his electric car near the front of the bank. The interest of the crowd, which under ordinary circumstances would have been centered on the queer vehicle, was not drawn toward it. The people were all thinking of their money. Suddenly one of the two doors of the bank slowly opened. There was a yell from the crowd and a rush to get in, but the police managed to hold the leaders back, and then Tom saw that it was Ned Newton who stood in the partly open portal. He held up his hand to indicate silence, and a hush fell over the mob. "The bank is open for business," Ned announced, "but there must be no rush. The building is not large enough to accommodate all of you. If you form a line, you will be admitted in your turn. The bank hopes to pay you all."
"Hopes!" cried a woman scornfully. "We can't eat hopes, young man, nor yet pay the rent with it. Hopes, indeed!"
But Ned had said all he cared to, and with rather a white face he went back inside. The one door remained open, and with a policeman on either side, a line of anxious depositors was slowly formed. Tom watched them crowding and surging forward, all eager to be the first to get their cash out, lest there be not enough for all. As he watched, the young inventor was aware that someone was signaling to him from the big window of the bank. He looked more closely and saw Ned Newton beckoning to him, and the young cashier was motioning Tom to go around to the rear, where a door of the bank opened on a small alley. Wondering what was wanted, Tom slowly ran his machine down the side street and up the alley. No one paid any attention to him. A porter admitted the lad, and he made his way to the private offices, where he knew his father and Mr. Damon would be. In the corridors he could hear the murmurs of the throng and the chink of money as the tellers paid it out. "Well, Tom, this is bad business," remarked Mr. Swift as he saw his son. The lad noticed that Mr. Damon was in the telephone booth. "Yes, Dad," admitted Tom. "It's a run, all right."
"What are you going to do?"
"The best we can. Pay out all the cash we have and hope that before that time the people will come to their senses. The bank is all right if they would only wait, but I'm afraid they won't, and after we pay out all the cash we have, we'll have to close the doors. Then there's sure to be an unpleasant scene, and maybe some of the more hot-headed ones will advocate violence. We have given orders to the tellers to pay out as slowly as possible, so as to enable us to gain some time." "And all you need is money. Is that it, Dad?" "That's it, Tom. But we have exhausted every possibility. Mr. Damon is trying a forlorn hope now, but even if he is successful—" Before Mr. Swift had ceased speaking, Mr. Damon fairly burst from the telephone booth. He was much excited. I've got it, he cried. "What?" asked Mr. Swift and Tom in the same breath. "The cash, or what's just as good, the promise of it. I called up Mr. Chase of the Clayton National Bank, and he has agreed to take the railroad securities I offered him as collateral and let me have the $60,000 on them. That will give us cash enough to weather the storm. Hurrah! We're all right now. Bless my checkbook." "The Clayton National Bank," remarked Mr. Swift, and his voice was hopeless. "It's 40 miles away, Mr. Damon, and no railroad around here runs anywhere near it. No one could get there and back with the cash today, in time to save us from ruin. It's impossible. Our last chance is gone." "How far did you say it was, Dad?" asked Tom quickly. 40 miles there, over 40, I guess, and not very good roads. We would need to have the cash here before 3 o'clock to be of any service to us." "No, it's out of the question. The bank will have to fail." "No!" cried the young inventor, and his voice rang out through the room. "I'll get the cash for you." "How?" gasped Mr. Damon. "You can't get there and back in time." "Yes, I can," cried Tom. "In my electric runabout. I can make it go 100 miles an hour if necessary. Probably I'll have to run slow over the bad roads, but I can do it. I know I can. I'll get the $60,000 for you." For a moment there was silence, and then Mr. Damon cried, "Good! And I'll go with you and deliver the securities to Mr. Chase. Come on, Tom Swift. Bless my collar button. But maybe we can save the old bank after all." Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 18. After the Cash. Tom's proposal as a way out of the difficulty, and the prompt seconding of it by Mr. Damon, seemed to deprive the other bank officials, Mr. Swift included, of the power of speech for a few moments. Then, as there came to the room where the scene had taken place the sound of the mob outside clamoring for cash, Mr. Pendergast, the president, remarked in a low voice, "It seems to be the only way. Do you think you can do it, Tom Swift?" "I'm sure of it, as far as my electric car is concerned," replied the young inventor. "If we get the cash, I'll have it back here on time. The runabout is all ready for a fast trip." "Then don't lose any time, Tom," advised his father. "Every minute counts." "Yes," added Mr. Damon. "Come on, I've got the securities in my valise, and we can bring the cash back in the same satchel. Come on, Tom." The eccentric character caught up his valise and started from the room. Tom followed. "Now, my son, be careful," advised his father. "You know the need of haste, but don't take unnecessary risks. You'd better go out the back way, as the crowd is easily excited." Little more was said. Mr. Swift clasped his son's hand in a firm pressure, and the bank president nervously bade the lad good-bye. Then, slipping out of the bank by the rear entrance, the porter closing the door after them, Tom and Mr. Damon took their places in the electric machine. "Just imagine you're racing for that $3,000 prize offered by the Touring Club of America, Tom," observed Mr. Damon, as he deposited the valise at his feet. "I don't have to do that," replied the youth. "I'm trying for a bigger prize than that. I want to save the bank and defeat the schemes of the Fogers, father and son." Tom turned on the power, and the machine rolled out on the main street. As it turned the corner, leaving the impatient crowd of depositors now larger than ever behind, Mr. Damon glanced over at the new bank, and as he did so he called to Tom, "There are the Fogers now." The young inventor looked and saw Andy and his father on the steps of the new institution. At the sight of the electric car speeding along, Andy turned and spoke to his parent. What he said seemed to impress Mr. Foger, for he started and looked more intently at Tom and Mr. Damon. Then, as Tom watched, he saw the two excitedly conversing, and a moment later Andy ran off in the direction in which Sam Snedeker and Pete Bailey lived. "I wonder if he's up to any tricks," thought Tom, as he turned on more power. "Well, if he is, I'll soon be where he can't reach me." The young inventor did not dare send his car at full speed through the streets of the town, and it was not until several minutes had passed that they could go more than the ordinary rate. But once the open country was reached, Tom opened her up full, and the song the motor sung was one of power. The vehicle quickly gathered headway and was soon fairly whizzing along.
"If we keep this up, we'll be there and back in good time," remarked Mr. Damon.
"Yes, but we can't do it," replied his companion. "The road to Clayton is a poor one, and we'll soon be on it. Then we'll have to go slow. But I'll make all the time I can until then." So for several miles more they crept along, at times having to reduce to almost a walking pace. Because of bad roads, Mr. Damon looked at his watch almost every other minute. "11 o'clock," he remarked, as they passed a milestone. "And we're not halfway there, bless my gizzard. But I'm afraid we won't make it, Tom. We left about 10, and we ought to be back by 2 o'clock to do any good. That's 4 hours, and it will take some time to transfer the securities and get the cash. Every minute counts." "I know it," answered Tom, "and I'm going to count every minute." With eager eyes he watched every inch of the road to steer to the best advantage. His hands gripped the wheel until his knuckles showed white with the strain, and every now and then his right hand adjusted the speed lever or the controller handle, while his foot was on the emergency brake, ready to stop the car at the first sign of danger. And there was danger, not infrequently, for the road was up and down hill, over frail bridges, and along steep cliffs. It was no pleasure tour they were on. When a little over half the distance had been made, they came to a better road, and Tom was able to use full speed ahead. Then the electric car went so fast that, had it not been for the steel windshield in front, Mr. Damon, at any rate, would have been short of breath. "This is going some," he cried to Tom. The lad nodded grimly and shoved the controller handle over to the last notch. Then came a bad stretch, and they had to slow down again. As they were about out of it came a little flash of fire, and the motor stopped. "Bless my overshoes!" cried Mr. Damon. "What's that? A fuse blown out?" "No," replied Tom with a puzzled air. "But something has gone wrong." Hastily he got out and made an examination. He found it was only one of the unimportant wires which had short-circuited, and it was soon adjusted. But they had lost 5 precious minutes. Tom tried to make up for lost time, but came to a hill a little later, and this reduced their speed. "You think we can make it before 12?" asked Mr. Damon anxiously. "We've got to, if we're to get back before 3, Tom." "I'll try," was the calm answer, and Tom's jaw was shut still more tightly. Once again came more favorable roads, and pushing the car to the limit the occupants were rejoiced, a little later, as they topped a hill, to come in sight of a fairly large city. "There's Clayton!" cried Mr. Damon. 10 minutes later they were rolling through the main street, and as they stopped in front of the bank the noon whistles blew shrill and noisily. "You did it, Tom!" cried Mr. Damon, springing out with the valise of securities. "Now be ready for the return trip. I'll be with you as soon as possible." He went up the bank steps 3 at a time, like some boy instead of an elderly man. Tom looked after him for a second and then got down to oil up his car and to make some adjustments that had rattled loose from the rough road. Unmindful of the curious throng that had gathered, he crawled into the machine with his oil can. He had finished his work and was back in his seat, ready to start, but Mr. Damon had not reappeared. "It's taking him a good while to get that cash," thought Tom. "Maybe the securities were no good." But a few minutes later Mr. Damon came hurrying from the bank. The valise he carried seemed much heavier than when he went in. "It's all right, Tom," he said. "I've got it. Now for the trip home, and I hope we don't have any accidents. It took longer than I thought to check over the bonds and receipt for them. But I've got the cash. Now to save the bank." He took his place beside the young inventor, holding the valise between his knees, while Tom turned on the power and sent the car dashing down the street and toward the road that led to Shopton. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 19. Stopped on the Road. "Did Mr. Chase make any objection to giving you the cash?" asked Tom, as he shoved the controller over another notch and caused the motor to make a higher note in its song of speed. "Oh, no, he was very nice about it," replied Mr. Damon. "He said he hoped our bank would pull through, said if we needed more cash we could have it." It was nearly 1 o'clock, and they had the worst part of the journey yet to go. 30 miles of stiff roads lay between them and Shopton, the last 5 and the first 5 being fairly good, with here and there soft spots. Up hill and down went the electric auto. At every opportunity Tom let out all the speed he could draw from the motor, but there were many times when he had to slow down. He had just made the ascent of a steep hill and was turning into a fairly good road, skirting the edge of a steep cliff, when there came a sharp report.
"Bless my soul, that's a fuse. I'm sure of it," cried Mr. Damon.
"No," announced Tom, as he quickly shut off the power. "It's a puncture. One of the inner tubes of the tire has been pierced. I was afraid of that tube."
"What have you got to do, put on a new tire?" asked Mr. Damon.
"No, I'm going to put on a new wheel. I carry 2 spare ones with tires already inflated. It won't take long." But the process of changing wheels consumed more time than Tom anticipated, for the nut was stuck, and he and Mr. Damon had to exert all their strength before they could loosen it. When the new wheel was in place, 10 minutes had been lost. "Hold on now, I'm going to speed her," cried Tom, when they were once more in their seats. And speed the machine he did. The road was rough, but despite this the lad turned on almost full power. Over the bumps they went, around curves, and into rain-washed ruts, careening from side to side, and throwing Mr. Damon about, as he expressed it afterward,
"like a bean inside a football."
As for the young inventor, his grasp of the steering wheel and the manner in which he could brace himself against the foot pedals held him more firmly in place, and on they rushed, covering mile after mile and approaching Shopton, where so much depended on their arrival. Good and bad stretches of the road alternated, but now that Tom had seen of what metal his car was made, he did not spare it as much as he had on the first trip. He saw that his machine would stand hard knocks, and the way the battery and motor was behaving was a joy to him. He knew that if he could make that 80-mile run in safety, he stood a good chance of winning the prize, for no harder test could have been devised. But the race was still far from won. There was a particularly unsafe stretch of road yet to be covered, and then would come a smooth highway into Shopton.
10 miles more,"
observed Mr. Damon, snapping shut his big gold watch.
10 miles more, and it's 1:15 now. We ought to be there at 1:15, and that will be in good time, eh, Tom?"
"I think so. But I don't know about this piece of road we're coming to. It seems worse than when we passed over it this morning." As he spoke, the auto began to slow up, for the wheels had struck some heavy sand, and it was necessary to reduce the current. Tom turned back the controller handle, but watched with eager eyes for a sign that the roadbed was harder, so that he could increase speed. As the car turned around a curve, passing through a lonely stretch of country, with woods on either side of the highway, Tom, glancing up, uttered a cry of astonishment.
"What's the matter? Something gone wrong?"
asked his companion. For answer, Tom pointed. There, just ahead of them, was a big load of hay, and it was evident that the driver was in no particular hurry. "We can't pass without getting in over our hubs," cried Tom. "If we turn out, the side ditches are so soft that we'll need help to pull out, and the road is so narrow for several miles that we'll have to trail along behind that fellow."
"Bless my checkbook!" cried Mr. Damon. "Are we going to lose after all, on account of a load of hay? No, I'll buy it from him first at double the market price, tip it over, set fire to it, toss it in a ditch, and then we can go past."
"Maybe that will be the answer," retorted Tom grimly. He put on a little more speed and was soon close up behind the load of hay, ringing his electric bell as a warning.
"I say," called Mr. Damon to the unseen driver, "can you turn out and let us pass?"
Well, I guess not," came the answer in unmistakable farmer's accents.
"You automobile fellers is too gol-hang smart racing along the roads. I've just got as good a right here as you fellers have, by heck."
The driver did not show himself. "We know that," responded Tom as quickly as he could, for he did not want to anger the man. "But our machine is so heavy that if we turn into the ditch, I'm afraid we'll be mired."
"Huh? So'll I," was the retort from the unseen driver. "Think I want to spy on my load of hay?"
"But you have wide tires on, and you wouldn't sink in far," answered the young inventor. "Besides, it's very necessary that we get past. A great deal depends on our speed."
"So does mine," was the reply. If I get to market late, I'll have to stay all night and spend the money on a hotel bill." "I'll pay it. I'll pay your bill if you only pull out," cried Mr. Damon. "I'll give you $100.
He suddenly ceased speaking. From the bushes along the road sprang several ragged masked figures, each one aiming his weapon at Tom, said in a low voice that could not have been heard by the driver of the hay wagon.
"Slow up your machine, young feller. We want to speak with you, and don't you make a loud noise, or it won't be healthy for you." "Why, of all the—"
began Mr. Damon, but another of the bandits, leveling his weapon at the eccentric man, growled,
"Dry up if you don't want to get shot."
Mr. Damon subsided. Discretion was very plainly the better part of valor. Tom had shut off the current. The load of hay continued on ahead. Tom thought perhaps the driver of it might have been in collusion with the thieves to cause the auto to slow up. "What do you want with us?" asked the young inventor, trying to speak calmly, but finding it a hard task, with a revolver pointed at him.
"You know what we want," exclaimed the leader in a low voice. "We want that cash you got from the bank, and we're going to have it. Come now, shell out."
And he advanced toward the automobile. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 20. On Time. Close around the electric auto crowded the members of the hold-up gang. Their eyes seemed to glare through the holes of their black masks. Instantly Tom thought of the other occasion when he was halted by masked figures. Could these, by any possibility, be the same individuals? Was this a trick of Andy Foger and his cronies? Tom tried to pierce through the disguises. Clearly the persons were men, not boys, and they wore the ragged clothes of tramps. Also, there was an air of dogged determination about them.
"Well, are you going to shell out?" asked the leader, taking a step nearer. "Or will we have to take it?"
"Bless my very existence, you don't mean to say that you're going to take the money? I mean, how do you know we have money?"
And Mr. Damon hastily corrected himself.
"What right have you to stop us in this highway? Don't you know that every minute counts? We're in a hurry."
"I know it," spoke the leading masked figure with a laugh. "I know you have considerable money in that she-bag, and I know what you hope to do with it. Prevent the run on Shopton National Bank. But we need that money as much as some other people. What's more, we're going to have it. Come on, shell out."
"Oh, why didn't we bring a gun?"
lamented Mr. Damon in a low voice to Tom.
"Isn't there anything we can do? Can you give them an electric shock, Tom?"
"I'm afraid not. If it wasn't for that hay wagon, we could turn on the current and make a run for it. But we'd only go into the ditch if we tried to pass now."
The load of hay was down the road, but as Tom looked he noticed a curious thing. It seemed to be nearer than it was when the attack of the masked men came. The wagon actually seemed to have backed up. Once more the thought came to the lad that possibly the load of fodder might be one of the factors on which the thieves counted. They might have used it to make the auto halt, and the man or men who were on it were probably in collusion with the bandits. There was no doubt about it. The load of hay was coming nearer, backing up instead of moving away. Tom couldn't understand it. He gave a swift glance at the robbers. They had not appeared to notice this, or if they had, they gave no sign.
"Then we can't do anything," murmured Mr. Damon.
"I don't see how we can," replied the young inventor in a low voice.
"And the money we've worked so hard to get won't do the bank any good."
And Mr. Damon sighed. "It's tough luck," agreed Tom.
"Come now, fork over that cash,"
called the leader, advancing still closer.
"None of that talk between you there. If you think you can work some trick on us, you're mistaken. We're desperate men, and we're well armed. The first show of resistance you make, and we'll shoot. Get that, fellows?" he added to his followers, and they nodded grimly.
"Well," remarked Mr. Damon with an air of submission, "I only want to warn you that you are acting illegally, and that you are perpetrating a desperate crime."
"Oh, we know that, all right," answered one of the men, and Tom gave a start. He was sure he had heard that voice before. He tried to remember it, tried to penetrate the disguise, but he could not. "I'll give you 10 seconds more to hand over that bag of money,"
went on the leader. "If you don't, we'll take it, and some of you may get hurt in the process." There seemed nothing else to do. With a white face, but with anger showing in his eyes, Mr. Damon reached down to get the valise. Tom had retained his grip on the steering wheel and the starting lever. He hoped, at the last minute, he might see a chance to dash away and escape, but the load of hay was in the path. He noted that it was now quite near, but the thieves paid no attention to it. Tom might have reversed the power and sent his machine backward, but he could not see to steer it if he went in that direction, and would have soon gone into the ditch. There was nothing to do save to hand over the cash, it seemed. Mr. Damon had the bag raised from the car, and the leader of the thieves was reaching up for it when there came a sudden interruption. From the load of hay there sounded a fusillade of pistol shots, cracking out with viciousness. This was instantly followed by the appearance of 3 men who came running from around the load of hay down the road toward the thieves. Each man carried a pitchfork, and as they ran, one of the trio shouted, "Right at 'em, boys! Jab your hay forks clean through the scoundrels! By heck, I guess we'll show 'em we know how to tackle a hold-up gang as well as the next fellow. Right at 'em now! Charge 'em! Stick your forks right through 'em!" Again there sounded a fusillade of pistol shots. The thieves turned as one man and glanced at the relief so unexpectedly approaching. They gave one look at the 3 determined-looking farmers with their sharp, glittering pitchforks, and then, without a word, they turned and fled, leaping into the bushes that lined the roadway. The underbrush closed after them, and they were hidden from sight. On came the 3 farmers, waving their effective weapons, the pistol shots still ringing out from the load of hay. Tom could not understand it, and could see no one firing, could detect no smoke. "Are they gone? Did they rob ye?" asked the foremost of the trio, a burly, grizzled farmer. "Burst my buttons, I guess we scared 'em all right." "Bless my shoe buttons, you certainly have," cried Mr. Damon, descending from the automobile and wringing the hand of the farmer, while Tom thrust the bag of money under his legs and waited further developments. The pistol shots rang out until one of the men called, "That'll do, bub. We've skeered 'em like Mrs. Zenobie's pet cat. You can't crack that whip any more." "Whip!" cried Tom. "Was that a whip?" "That's what it was," explained the leading farmer. "Bub Armstrong, my nephew, can crack it to beat the band." And as if in proof of this, there emerged from behind the load of hay a small lad carrying a large whip, to which he gave a few trial cracks like pistol shots, as if to show his ability. "It's all right, bub," his uncle assured him. "We made 'em run." "But I don't exactly understand," spoke Mr. Damon. "I thought you were in league with those thieves, stopping us as you did with your big load." "So did I," admitted Tom. "Ha, ha!" laughed the farmer. "That's a purty good joke. Excuse me for laughing. My name's Lyon, Jethro Lyon of Salina Township, and these are my 2 sons, Ade and Bert. You see, we're on our way to Shopton, and my nephew, Bub, he went along. We thought you was some of them sassy automobile fellows at first. When you hollered to us, you wanted to pass. Then when we looked back, we seen them burglars a-goin' to rob you. At least that's what we suspicioned." And he paused suggestively. "That was it," Tom said. "Well, when we seen that, we held a sort of consultation on that load of hay where they couldn't see us. It was so big, you know," he needlessly explained. "Well, we calculated we could help you, so I just quietly backed up until we was near enough. I told Bub to take the long whip and crack it for all he was worth, so it would sound like reinforcements approaching with guns, and he done it." "He certainly done it," added Bert. "Well," resumed Mr. Lyon, "then me and my sons, we just slipped down off the front seat and come a-running with our pitchforks. I reckoned them burglars would run when they see us and hurt us, and they done so." "Yep, they done so," added Abe like an echo. "I can't tell you how much obliged we are to you," said Mr. Damon. "We have $60,000 in this valise, and they would have had it in another minute, and the bank would have failed." "$60,000!" gasped Mr. Lyon, and his sons and nephew echoed the words. Mr. Damon briefly explained about the money, and he and the young inventor again thanked their rescuers, who had so unexpectedly and in such a novel manner put the thieves to flight.
"And you've got to get to Shopton before 3 o'clock with that cash?" asked Mr. Lyon.
"That's what we hope to do," replied Tom, "but I'm afraid we won't now. It's 2:30, and—"
"Don't say another word," interrupted Mr. Lyon. "I know what you mean. My hay's in the road. But don't let that worry you none. I'll pull out of your road in a jiffy, and if we do go down in the ditch, why, we can throw off part of the load, lighten the wagon, and pull out again. You've got to hustle if you get to Shopton by 3 o'clock.
"I can do it with a clear road," declared Tom confidently.
"Then you'll have the clear road," Mr. Lyon assured him. "Come, boys, let's get the hay on one side."
The farmers pulled into the ditch. As they had feared, the wagon went in almost to the hubs, but they did not mind, and even as Tom and Mr. Damon shot past them, they fell back to work tossing off part of the fodder to lighten the wagon. The young inventor and his companion waved a grateful farewell to them as they fairly tore past, for Tom had turned on almost the full current.
"Do you suppose that was the Happy Harry gang, or some members of it who were not captured and sent to jail?" asked Mr. Damon.
"I don't believe so," answered the lad, shaking his head. "Maybe they didn't really want to rob us. Perhaps they only wanted to delay us so we wouldn't get to the bank on time."
"Bless my topknot, you may be right," cried Mr. Damon.
Further conversation became difficult as they struck a rough part of the road, where the vehicle swayed and jolted to an alarming degree, but Tom never slackened pace. On and on they rushed, Mr. Damon frequently looking at his watch.
"We've got 20 minutes left,"
he remarked as they came out on the smooth stretch of road that led directly into Shopton. Then Tom turned all the reserve power into the motor. The machinery almost groaned as the current surged into the wires, but it took up the load, and the electric car, swaying more than ever, dashed ahead with its burden of wealth. Now they were in the town, now speeding down the street leading to the bank. One or two policemen shouted after them, for they were violating the speed laws, but it was no time to stop for that. On and on they dashed. They came in sight of the bank. A long line of persons was still in front. They seemed more excited than in the morning, for the hour of 3 was approaching, and they feared the bank would close its doors, never to open them again.
"The run is still on," observed Mr. Damon.
"But it will soon be over," predicted Tom. Some news of the errand of the automobile must have penetrated the crowd, for as Tom swung past the front entrance to the bank to go up the rear alley, he was greeted with a cheer.
"Hey, got the cash!" a man cried. "I'm satisfied now. I won't draw out my deposit." "I want to see the cash before I believe it," said another.
Tom slowed up to make the turn into the alley. As he did so, he glanced across the street to the new bank. In the window stood Andy Foger and his father. There was a look of surprise on their faces as they saw the arrival of the powerful car, and Tom fancied also a look of chagrin. Up the alley went the car, police keeping the crowd from following. The porter was at the door. So also was Mr. Pendergast and Mr. Swift, while some of the other officers were grouped behind them.
"Did you get the money?" gasped the president.
"We did," answered Tom. "Are we on time, Dad?"
"Just on time, my boy. They're paying out the last of the cash now."
"You're on time, thank fortune." Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 21. Off to the Big Race. From their task of handing out money to eager depositors, the wearied tellers looked up as Tom and Mr. Damon entered with the big valise crammed full of money. It was opened, and the bundles of bills turned out on a table.
"Perhaps you'd better make an announcement to the crowd, Mr. Pendergast," suggested Mr. Swift.
"Tell them now we have cash enough to meet all demands, and that the bank will be kept open until everyone is paid."
"I will," agreed the aged president.
His announcement was received with cheers and had exactly the effect the inventor hoped it would. Many, learning that the bank was safe and that they could have their money whenever they wanted it, concluded not to withdraw, thus saving the interest. Scores in the waiting crowd turned out of line and went home. Their example was contagious, and though many still remained to get their deposits, the run was broken. Only part of the $60,000 Tom and Mr. Damon had brought through after the race with time was needed. But had it not been for the moral effect of the cash arriving as it did, the bank would have failed. "You have a great car, Tom Swift," complimented Mr. Pendergast when the excitement had somewhat cooled down and the story of the hold-up had been told. "I think so myself," agreed the young inventor modestly. "I must get ready for the races now." "And as for those farmers, I think I'll send them a reward," went on the president. "They deserve something for the trouble they had with the load of hay." "I certainly shall send them a reward," which he did, and a substantial one, too. Of course, the hold-up was at once reported to the police after the run had quieted down, but Chief Simpson surprised Tom by saying that he had expected it. "The gang that held you up," said the police officer, "was one that escaped from a jail about 20 miles away. I got a tip after you left that they were going to rob you, for in some way they learned about the money you and Mr. Damon were to bring from the bank. The unfortunate part of it was that the tip I got was to the effect that the hold-up would take place just outside of Clayton. I telephoned to the police there just after you left, and they said they'd send out a posse, but the gang changed their plans and held you up near here, where I wasn't expecting it. But I'll get 'em yet." Chief Simpson did not arrest the gang, but some other police officers did, and they were taken back to jail. They were not prosecuted for the attempted robbery of Tom, as it was considered difficult to fix the guilt on them, but they received such a long additional sentence for breaking jail that it will be many years before they are released. When Tom reached home that night, he found some mail from the officials of the Touring Club of America. It was to the effect that arrangements for the big contest had been completed and that contesting cars must be on the ground by September 1st. "That gives me 2 weeks yet," thought our hero. He read further of the regulations covering the race. Each car must proceed from the hometown or city of the owner and go to the track under its own power. This was a new regulation, it was stated, and was adopted to better develop the industry of building electric autos. 2 passengers, or 1 in addition to the driver, must be carried, it was stated, and this one would also be expected to be in the car during the entire race. Regarding the race proper, it was stated that at first it had been decided to make it a 24-hour endurance contest, but that for certain reasons this was changed, as it was found that few storage batteries could go this length of time without a number of rechargings. Therefore, the race was to be one for distance, 500 miles, on the new Long Island track, and the car first covering that distance would win. Cars were allowed to change their batteries as often as they needed to, but all time lost would count against them. There were other rules and regulations of minor importance. "Well," remarked Tom as he read through the circulars, "I must get my car in shape. It will be quite a trip to Long Island, and I think my best plan will be to go direct to the cottage we had when we were building the submarine, and from there proceed to the track. That will comply with the rules, I think. But who will I get to go with me? I suppose Mr. Damon or Mr. Sharp will be willing. I'll ask them." He broached the matter to his 2 friends that night, and they both agreed to go to Long Island in the car, though only Mr. Sharp would accompany Tom in the race. The next 2 weeks were busy ones for Tom. He worked night and day over his car, getting it in shape for the big event. The young inventor made some changes in his battery, and also adopted a new gear which would give greater speed. He also completed the exterior of the auto, giving it several coats of purple paint and varnish, so that when it was finished, though it was different in shape from most autos, it was as fine an appearing car as one could wish. He arranged to carry 2 extra wheels, with tires inflated, and under the rear seats, or tonneau, as he called it, Tom fitted up a complete tire repairing outfit. Mr. Sharp agreed to ride there, and in case there was need to use more than 2 spare wheels during the race, the rubber shoes, or inner tubes, could be mended while the car was swinging around the track. Mr. Damon would ride in front with Tom on the cross-country trip, and occasionally relieve him at steering, or would help to manage the electrical connections, spare fuses, extra parts, wires, and different things he thought he might need. The young inventor stored in his car. He also found means to install a small additional storage battery to give added power in case of emergency. Tom learned from the racing officials that if he made a trip from Shopton to the cottage on the coast near the city of Atlantis, and later traveled from there to the track, it would fulfill the conditions of the contest. Finally, all was in readiness, and one morning, having spent the better part of the night going over his machine to see that he had forgotten nothing, Tom invited Mr. Damon and Mr. Sharp to enter and prepare for the trip to Long Island.
"Well, Tom, I certainly hope you win that race," remarked Mrs. Baggert, as she stood in the doorway waving farewell. "If I do, I'll buy you a pair of diamond earrings to match the diamond ring I gave you from the money I got from the wreck," promised the lad with a laugh.
"And if you sees dat Andy Foger,"
added Eradicate Sampson, while he rubbed the long ears of Boomerang, his mule,
"if you sees him, just run over him once or twice for my sake, Mr. Swift."
"I'll do that for my own, too," agreed Tom. The youth shook hands with his father, who wished him good luck, and then, after a final look at his car, he climbed to his seat and turned on the power. There was a low hum from the motor, and the electric started off. Would it return a winner or loser of the big race? Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 22. In a Ditch. Through the streets of Shopton went Tom Swift and his friends. News of the big contest the young inventor was about to take part in had circulated around town, and there were not wanting many to wish him good luck. The lad responded smilingly to the farewells he received. As they passed the bank, Ned Newton came out on the steps. "Wish I was going along," he called. "So do I," replied Tom. "How's everything? Is the bank all right since the run?" For he had not had time to pay much attention to the institution since his memorable race against time to get the money. "Stronger and better than ever," was Ned's answer as he came to the curb, where Tom slowed up. "I hear," he added in a whisper, "that the other fellows are going out of business. Foger and his crowd, you know. They loaned money on unsecured notes to make a good showing, and now they can't get it back. But we're all right. Hope you win the race." "So do I." "What will a certain person do while you're away?" went on Ned with a wink. "I don't know what you mean," replied Tom, trying not to blush. "Do you mean my dad or Mrs. Baggert?" "Neither, you old hypocrite, you. I meant Miss Mary Nestor." "Oh, hadn't you heard?" inquired Tom innocently. "She's going to Long Island to visit some friends, and she'll be at the race." "You lucky dog," murmured Ned with a laugh as he went into the bank. Once more the electric auto started off, and was soon on the quiet country road, where Tom speeded it up moderately. He hoped to make the entire distance to the shore cottage on the single charge of current he had put into the battery at home, and, as there was no special need for haste, he wanted to save his power. The machine was running smoothly and seemed able to make a long race against time. The travelers ate lunch that day at Pendleton, a town some distance from Shopton. They had covered a substantial part of their trip. After a brief rest, they started on again. Tom had planned to spend 2 days and 1 night on the road, hoping to be able to reach the shore cottage on the evening of the second day. There, after recharging the battery, he would spend a night or two, and proceed to the track, ready for the race. They found the roads fairly good, with bad stretches here and there, which made it necessary for them to slow down. This delayed them, and they found the shadows lengthening and darkness approaching when they were still several miles from Burgfield, where they intended to sleep. "Will it be all right to travel at night?" asked Mr. Damon, a bit nervously. "Why, are you thinking of hold-up men?" inquired Mr. Sharp. "No, but I was wondering about the condition of the roads," replied the eccentric man. "We don't want to run into a rock or collide with something." "I guess this will light up the road far enough in advance so that we can see where we are going," suggested Tom, as he switched on the powerful electric searchlight. Though it was not dark enough to illuminate the highway to the best advantage, the powerful gleam shone dazzlingly in front of the swiftly moving auto. "I guess that will show up every pebble on the road," commented the balloonist. "It's very powerful." Tom turned off the light as, until it was darker, he could see to better advantage unaided by it. He slowed down the speed somewhat, but was still going at a good rate. "There's a bridge somewhere about here," remarked the lad, when they had gone on a mile further. "I remember seeing it on my road map. It's not very strong, and we'll have to run slow over it."
"Bless my gizzard, I hope we don't go through it," cried Mr. Damon. "Is your car very heavy, Tom?"
"Not heavy enough to break the bridge. There it is. Guess I'll turn on the lights so we can see what we're doing." Just ahead of them loomed up the superstructure of a bridge, and Tom turned the searchlight switch. At the instant he did so, whether he did not keep a steady hand on the steering wheel or whether the auto went into a rut from which it could not be turned, did not immediately develop, but the car suddenly shot from the straight road and swerved to one side. There was a lurch, and the front wheels sank down.
"Look out, we're going into the river,"
yelled Mr. Damon. Tom jammed on the brakes and shut off the current. The auto came to a sudden stop. The young inventor turned the searchlight downward to illuminate the ground directly in front of the car. "Are we in the river?" asked Mr. Sharp. "No," replied Tom, in great chagrin. "We're in a muddy ditch, one at the side of the road, wheels in over the hubs. There should have been a guardrail here. We're stuck for fair." Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 23. The Power Gone.
"Bless my overshoes!" cried Mr. Damon. "Stuck in the mud, eh?"
"Hard and fast," added Tom in disgust. "What's to be done?" inquired Mr. Sharp.
"I should say we'll have to stay here until daylight and wait for some other auto to come along and pull us out," was Mr. Damon's opinion. "It's mighty unpleasant, too, for there doesn't seem to be any place around here where we can spend the night in any kind of comfort. If we had the submarine or the airship now, it wouldn't so much matter."
"No, and this won't matter a great deal," remarked the young inventor quickly. "We'll soon be out of this, but it will be hard work." "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Sharp. "I mean that we've got to pull ourselves out of this mud hole," explained the lad as he prepared to descend. "I was afraid something like this would happen, so I came prepared for it. I've got ropes and pulleys with me in the car. We'll fasten the rope to the machine, attach one pulley to the bridge, another to the car, and I guess we can get out of the mud. We'll try anyhow."
"Well, I must say you look pretty far ahead,"
complimented Mr. Damon. From a box under the tonneau, Tom took out a thin but strong rope and two compound pulleys, which would enable considerable force to be applied. Mr. Sharp detached one of the powerful oil lamps, and the three travelers took a look at the auto. It was indeed deep in the mud, and it seemed like a hopeless task to try to get it out unaided. But Tom insisted that they could do it, and the rope was soon attached, the hook of one pulley being slipped around one of the braces of the bridge.
"Now, all together!" cried the lad, as he and his friends grasped the long rope.
They gave a great heave. At first it seemed like pulling on a stone wall. The rope strained and the pulleys creaked.
"I guess we will pull the bridge over," gasped Mr. Sharp.
"Something's got to give way," puffed Tom. "Now, once more, all together." Suddenly they felt the rope moving. The pulleys creaked still more, and by the light of the lamp they could see that the auto was slowly being pulled backward, out of the mud and onto the hard road. In a few minutes it was ready to proceed again. The rope and pulleys were put away, and after Tom had made an examination of the car to see that it had sustained no damage, they were off again, making good time to the hotel in Burkfield, where they spent the night. They had an early breakfast, and as Tom went out to the barn to look at his car, he saw it surrounded by a curious throng of men and boys. One of the boys was turning some of the handles and levers.
"Here, quit that!"
yelled Tom, and the meddlesome lad leaped down in fright.
"Do you want to start the car and have it smash into something?" demanded the young inventor.
Nothing happened," retorted the lad. "I pulled every handle on it. It didn't move."
"Good reason," murmured Tom, for he had taken the precaution to remove a connecting plug, without which the machine could not be started. The three were soon under way again, and covered many miles over the fine country roads, the weather conditions being delightful. On inquiry, they found that by taking an infrequently used highway, they could save several miles. It was over an unoccupied part of country, rather wild and desolate, but they did not mind that. They were whizzing along, talking of Tom's chances for winning the race, when, after climbing a slight grade, the auto came to a sudden stop on the summit. "What's the matter?" asked Mr. Sharp. "Why are you stopping here, Tom?" "I didn't stop," was the surprising answer, and the lad shoved the starting lever back and forth. But there was no response. There was no hum from the motor. The machine was dead. "That's queer," muttered the young inventor. "Maybe a fuse blew out," suggested Mr. Damon, that seeming to be his favorite form of trouble. "If it had, you'd have known it," remarked Mr. Sharp. "There's plenty of current in the battery, according to the registering gauge," murmured the lad. "I can't understand it." He reversed the current, thinking the wires might have become crossed, but the machine would move neither backward nor forward. Yet the dial indicated there was enough power stored away to send it 100 miles or more. "Perhaps the dial hand has become caught," suggested Mr. Sharp. "That sometimes happens on a steam gauge and indicates a high pressure when there isn't any. Hit it slightly and see if the hand swings back." Tom did so. At once the hand fell to 0, indicating that there was not an ampere of current left. The battery was exhausted. But this fact had not been indicated on the gauge. "I see now," cried Tom. "It was those fellows at the hotel barn. They monkeyed with the mechanism, short-circuited the battery, and jammed the gauge, so I couldn't tell when my power was gone. If I had known there wasn't enough to carry us, I would have recharged the battery at the hotel. But I figured that I had enough current for the entire trip, and so there would have been, if it hadn't leaked away. Now we're in a pretty pickle." "Bless my hatband!" cried Mr. Damon. "Does that mean we can't move?" "Guess that's about it," answered Mr. Sharp, and Tom nodded. "Well, why can't we go on to some place where they sell electricity and get enough to take us where we want to go?" asked the odd character, whose ideas of machinery were somewhat hazy. "The only trouble is we can't carry the heavy car with us," replied Tom. "It's too big to pick up and take to a charging station." "Then we've got to wait until someone comes along with a team of horses and tows us in," commented Mr. Sharp, "and that will be some time on this lonely road." Tom shook his head despondently. He went over the car again, but was forced to the first conclusion, that the reserve current had leaked away in consequence of the meddling prank of the youth at the hotel. The situation was far from pleasant, and the delay would seriously interfere with their plans. Suddenly, as Tom was pacing up and down the road, he heard from afar a peculiar humming sound. He paused to listen. "Trolley car," observed Mr. Sharp. "Maybe one of us could go somewhere on the trolley and get help. There it is," and he pointed to the electric vehicle moving along about half a mile away at the foot of a gentle slope. At the sight of the car, Tom uttered a cry. "I have it!" he exclaimed. "None of us need go for help. It's right at hand." His companions looked curiously as the young inventor pointed triumphantly to the fast disappearing electric. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 24. On the Track. "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Damon. "Will the electric trolley pull us to a charging station?" "No, we'll not need to go to a station," answered the youth. "If we can get my car to the trolley tracks, I can charge my battery from there. And I think we can push the auto near enough. It's downhill, and I've got a long wire, so we won't have to go too close." "Good!" cried Mr. Sharp. "But attach the rope to the front of the car, Tom. Mr. Damon and I will pull it. You will have to ride in it to steer it." "We can take turns at riding," was Tom's answer, for he did not want his companions to do all the work. "Nonsense! You ride," said Mr. Damon. "You're lighter than we are and can steer better. It won't be any trouble at all to pull this car downhill." It proved to be an easy task, and in a short time the dead auto was near enough to the electric line to permit Tom to run his charging wire over to it. "Why, bless my soul!" exclaimed Mr. Damon, looking up. "There's no overhead trolley wire. The car must run on storage batteries." "Third rail, more likely," was the opinion of Mr. Sharp's, and so it proved. "I can charge from either the third rail or the trolley wire," declared Tom, who was insulating his hands in rubber gloves and getting his wires ready. In a short time He had the proper connections made, and the much-needed current was soon flowing into the depleted battery or batteries, for there were several sets, though the whole source of motive power was usually referred to as a storage battery.
"How long will it take?" asked Mr. Damon.
"About 2 hours," answered the lad. "We'll probably have to disconnect our wires several times whenever a trolley car comes past. By my system I can recharge the battery very quickly." "Do you suppose the owners of the road will make any objection?" asked the balloonist.
"I'm going to pay for the current I used," explained the young inventor.
"I have a meter which tells how much I take." The hum of an approaching car was heard, and Tom took the wires from the third rail. The car came to a stop opposite the automobile, the passengers as well as the crew looking curiously at the queer racing machine. Tom explained to the conductor what was going on and asked the fare collector to notify those in charge of the power station that all current used would be paid for. The conductor said this would be satisfactory, he was sure, and the car proceeded, Tom resuming the charging of his battery. Allowing plenty of reserve power to accumulate, and making sure that the gauge would not stick again and deceive him, the owner of the Speedy Electric was soon ready to proceed again. They had been delayed a little over 3 hours, for they had to make several shifts as the cars came past. They reached their shore cottage late that night, and after seeing that the runabout was safely locked in the big shed where the submarine had been built, they all went to bed, for they were very tired. Tom sent word the next day to the managers of the race that he would be on hand at the time stipulated, and announced that he had made part of the trip as required under the power of the auto itself. The next day was spent in overhauling the machinery, tightening up some loose bearings, oiling different parts, and further charging the battery. Tires were looked to, and the ones on the spare wheels were gone over to prepare for any emergency that might arise when the race was started. On the third day, Tom, Mr. Sharp, and Mr. Damon, leaving the cottage, completed the trip to Havenford, Long Island, where the new track had been constructed. They reached the place shortly before noon, and if they had been unaware of the location, they could not have missed it, for there were many autos speeding along the road toward the scene of the race, which would take place the following day. Several electric cars passed Tom and his friends, whizzing swiftly by, but the young inventor was not going to show off his speed until the time came. Besides, he did not want to run any risks of an accident. But some of the contestants seemed anxious for impromptu brushes, and more than one called to our hero, "Speed up, let's see what she can do." But Tom smiled and shook his head. There were many gasoline and some steam autos going out to the new track, which was considered a remarkable piece of engineering. It was in the shape of an octagon, and the turns were considered very safe. It was a 5-mile track, and to complete the race it would be necessary to make 100 circuits. Through scores of autos Tom and his friends threaded their way, the young inventor keeping a watchful eye on the various types of machine with which he would soon have to compete. There were many kinds. Some were larger, some smaller than his. Many obviously carried very large batteries, but whether they had the speed or not was another question. Some, in spurts, seemed to Tom to be fully as fast as his own, and he began to have some doubts whether he could win the race. "But I'm not going to give up until the 500th mile is finished," he thought grimly. They were now in sight of the track, and noted many machines speeding around it. "Go on in and try your car, Tom," urged Mr. Sharp.
"Yes, do,"
added Mr. Damon.
"Let's see how it travels."
"I will after I notify the proper officials that I have arrived," decided the lad. The formalities were soon completed with. Tom received his entry card after paying the fee, made affidavit that he had completed the entire trip from home under his own power, save for the little stretch when the car was pulled, which did not count against him, and was soon ready to go on the track. Only electric cars were allowed there. As the young inventor guided his latest effort in the machine line onto the big track, there were murmurs of surprise from the throngs.
"That's a queer machine," said one.
"Yes, but it looks speedy," was another's opinion.
"There's the car for my money,"
added a third, pointing to a big red electric, which was certainly whizzing around the track. Tom noted the red car. Behind it was a green one, also moving at a fast rate of speed. "Those will be my nearest rivals," thought the lad, as he guided his car onto the track. A moment later he was sending the auto ahead at moderate speed, while the other contestants looked at the new rival as if trying to discover whether in it they would have a dangerous competitor. Tom Swift and His Electric Runabout by Victor Appleton. Chapter 25. Winning the Prize. After making 2 circuits of the track at moderate speed, Tom turned on more power, deciding to see how the machine would behave on the turns, going at a fast speed. As it happened, he forged ahead just as the big red car was coming up behind him. The driver of it took this for a challenge and threw his controller handle forward. "Come on," he cried to our hero when even with him. Tom did not want to decline the invitation, and the impromptu race was underway. Soon the green car came rushing up, and for 2 miles the three kept almost in line. It was evident that neither the green nor the red car drivers wanted to open out until they saw Tom do so. He was willing to oblige them, and suddenly increased his speed. They did the same and went ahead of him. Then Tom turned on a little more juice and got the lead, but the 2 men were right after him, and they seesawed like this for 2 more miles. Then, with a cry, the man in the red car, with a sudden burst of speed, left Tom and the green car behind. The green car was soon up to its rival, but Tom decided he would not spurt. The lad and his friends spent the early part of the night making a final inspection of the machinery, finding it in good order. Then, with his head filled with visions of the race on the morrow, Tom went to bed. He had made inquiries by telephone of the friends of Miss Nestor and learned that she had not arrived. Tom felt a distinct sense of disappointment. The day of the race could not have been better. It was ideal weather, and conditions at the track were just right. Tom was up early and went over every inch of his car with a nervous dread that he might find something the matter. The final details of the race were completed, and the entrants given their numbers and places. Tom drew a good position, not the best, but he had no reason to complain. Half an hour before the start, he again telephoned to see if Miss Nestor had arrived, but she had not, and it was with rather gloomy thoughts that the lad entered his car, in which Mr. Sharp had already taken his place. Mr. Damon went to the grandstand to watch the race. "I wanted Mary to see me win," thought our hero, for he had grimly set his mind on coming in ahead. There was a great crowd in the grandstand and scattered about the big track, which took in a large extent of territory. In spite of its size, 5 miles around, it seemed solidly packed for the entire length with autos, containing gay parties who had come to see the electric contest. There was the band playing gay airs as Tom guided his machine through the entrance gate and on entrance gate. The judges made their final inspection. There were 20 cars entered, but it was obvious that some of them would not last long, as their battery capacity was not large enough. Their owners might have relied on recharging, but how they could do this under the usual slow system and hope to win, Tom could not see. He hoped to run the entire distance on the single charge, but if by some accident part of his current should leak away, his battery could be charged in a short time by means of his new system, to run for a considerable distance, or he could install a new one already charged, for he had 2 sets on hand. Tom glanced over the cars of his competitors. They were to be sent away in batches, the affair being a handicap one with time allowance for the smaller powered cars. Tom noted that his car and the red one and the green ones were in the same bunch. Tom's car was purple. "Are you all ready?" asked the starter of the first group of races. "Ready," was the low-voiced response. Crack went the pistol, and there followed the hum of the motors as the current set the mechanism to work. Forward went the cars, amid the crash of the band and the cheers of the crowd. The big race was under way. "Do you feel nervous, Tom?" asked Mr. Sharp. "Not a bit," replied the lad. Around and around the track flew the speedy electrics. It was evident that the holding of a meet solely for cars of this character had brought out many new ideas that would be to the benefit of the industry. Some cars were freaks, and others, like Tom's, showed a distinct advance over previous styles of construction. A 500-mile race around a track is rather a monotonous affair, except for what happens, and things very soon began to happen at this race. As Tom had expected, several of the machines were forced to withdraw. Tire troubles beset some, and others found that they were hopelessly out of it because of low power or lack of battery capacity. Tom determined not to let the red or the green car gain any advantage over him, and so he watched those two vehicles narrowly. On the other hand, the red and the green electrics were evidently afraid of one another and of Tom. They all three kept pretty much together for the first 30 miles. By this time the race had settled down into a steady grind. There was some excitement when the steering gear of one car broke and it crashed into the fence, injuring the driver. But the race went on. The young inventor was holding his own with his two chief rivals and was feeling rather proud of his car when there came from it a report like a pistol shot. "Blowout!" yelled Tom desperately, steering to one of the several repair stations on the inner side of the track. "Be ready with the extra wheel, Mr. Sharp." "Right you are," cried the balloonist. The car was scarcely stopped when he had leaped out and had the lifting jack under the left rear wheel, where the tire had gone to the bed. He and Tom labored like Trojans to take off the wheel and put on the other. They lost 5 minutes, and when they got under way again, the red and the green cars were 3/4 of a lap ahead. "You've got to catch them," declared Sharp firmly. But the red and the green car drivers saw their advantage and were determined to hold it. Tom could not catch them without going his limit, and he did not want to do this just yet. However, he had his opportunity when about 200 miles had been covered. Both the red and the green cars had tire troubles, but the red one was delayed scarcely 2 minutes, as there was a corps of mechanics on hand to take off the defective wheel and put on another. Still, Tom regained his lost ground, and once more the race between those three cars was even. In the rear of Tom's car, Mr. Sharp was mending the blown-out tire. Though there was still one spare wheel on reserve, Tom in front peered eagerly at the track. Nearly side by side raced the red and green cars, the latter somewhat to the rear. It was at the 350th mile that Tom had another blowout. This time it took a little longer to change the wheel, and the red and green cars gained a full lap on him. The track was now so dusty that it was difficult to see the contesting cars. Many had dropped out, and more were on the verge of giving up. With the odds against him, Tom started in to regain the lost ground. Narrowly he watched his electric power. Slowly he saw it dropping. Would he have enough left to finish out the race? He feared not. The hours were passing. Still there was 100 miles yet to go, 20 circuits of the track. Some of the spectators were getting weary and leaving. The band played spasmodically. Suddenly Tom saw the red car shoot to one side of the track toward a charging station. The green car followed. "That's our cue," cried the young inventor. "We need a little more juice, and now is the time to get it." The lad ran to the shed where his charging wires were, and they were connected in a trice. He allowed 25 minutes for the charging, as he knew with his improved battery he could get enough current in that time to finish the contest before the red and green car drivers had finished installing new batteries, for they could not recharge as quickly as could our hero. Tom was on the track again, but in a little while his two rivals were after him. It was now a spectacular race. Around and around swept the three big cars. All the others were practically out of it. The crowd became lively airs. Mile after mile was reeled off. The day was passing. Tired and covered with dust from the track, Tom still sat at the steering wheel. "2 more laps," cried Mr. Sharp as the starter's pistol gave this warning. "Can you get away from him, Tom?" The red and the green cars were following closely. The young inventor looked back and nodded. He turned on more power, almost to the limit that he was saving for the final spurt. But after him still came the two big cars. Suddenly the red car shot ahead. Just as the last lap was beginning, the green car tried to follow, but there was a flash of fire, a loud report, and Tom knew a fuse had blown out. There was no time for his rival to put in a new one. The race was now between Tom and the red car. Could the lad catch and pass it? They were now only a mile from the finish. The red car was 3 lengths ahead. With a quick motion, Tom turned on the last bit of power. There seemed to come a roar from his motor, and his car shot ahead. It was on even terms with the red car when what Tom had been fearing for the last 5 minutes happened. His fuse blew out. "Too bad. It's all up with us," cried Mr. Sharp. "No," cried Tom in a ringing voice. "I've got an emergency fuse ready." He snapped a switch in place, putting into commission another fuse. The motor that had lost speed began to pick it up again. Tom had pulled back the controller handle, but he now shoved it forward again, notch by notch, until it was at the limit. He had fallen back from the red car, and the occupants of that, with a yell of triumph, prepared to cross the line a winner. But, like a racehorse that nerves himself for the last desperate spurt, Tom's machine fairly leaped ahead, with his hands gripping the rim of the steering wheel until it seemed that the bones of his fingers would protrude. Tom sent his car straight for the finishing tape. There was a yell from the spectators. Men were standing up, waving their hats and shouting. Women were fairly screaming. Mr. Damon was blessing everything within sight. Mr. Sharp, in his excitement, was pushing the back of the front seats as if to shove the car ahead. Then, as the pistol announced the close of the race, Tom's car, with what seemed a mighty leap, like a hunter clearing a ditch, forged ahead and crossed the line a length in advance of the red car. Tom Swift had won. Amid the cheers of the crowd, the lad slowed up, and at the direction of the judges wheeled back to the stand to receive the prize. A certified check for $3,000 was handed him, and he received the congratulations of the racing officials. The driver of the red car also generously praised him. "You won fair square," he said, shaking hands with Tom. The young inventor and his friends drove their car to their shed. As Tom was descending wearily and begrimed with dust, he heard a voice asking, "Mayn't I congratulate you also?" He wheeled around to confront Mary Nestor, immaculate in a summer gown. Why," he stammered, I thought you didn't come." "Oh, yes, I did," she answered, laughing. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything. I arrived late, but I saw the whole race. Wasn't it glorious? I'm so glad you won." Tom was, too, now, but he shrank back when Miss Nestor held out both daintily gloved hands to him. His hands were covered with oil and dirt. "As if I cared for my gloves," she cried, and she took possession of his hands, a proceeding to which Tom was nothing loath. "Are you going to race any more?" she asked, as he walked along by her side, away from the gathering crowd. "I don't know," he replied. "My car is speedier than I thought it was. Perhaps I may enter it in other contests." But what Tom Swift did later on will be told in another volume. It is to be called Tom Swift and His Wireless Message, or Castaways of Earthquake Island, a strange tale of shipwreck and mystery. The run back home was made without incident, save for a broken chain, easily repaired, the day following the race, and Tom later received a number of invitations to give exhibitions of speed. Several automobile manufacturers wanted to secure the rights to his machine, but he said he desired to consider the matter before acting. He did not forget his promise to Miss Baggert regarding the diamond earrings, and bought her the finest pair he could find. "Come on, Mr. Sharp," proposed Tom a week or so after the big race. "Let's go for a spin in the airship. I want to see how it feels to be among the clouds once more." And they were soon soaring aloft. The new bank, started by Mr. Foger, did not flourish long. It closed its doors in less than 6 months. But the old institution was stronger than ever. Mr. Berg disappeared, and Tom never learned whether the agent really was the man he had chased and whose watch charm he tore loose, though he always had his suspicions. Nor did he ever develop who crossed the electric wires so that Tom was nearly fatally shocked. Andy Foger disliked our hero more than ever, and on several occasions caused him not a little trouble, but Tom was able to look after himself. The end.